Good evening and welcome to this Casa and Ghana short webinar on navigating the Indo-US strategic partnership. This webinar is very important for many purposes. But most important is the fact, or most significant is the fact, today the India-US partnership, it's debatable whether it's strategic anymore. And virtually it's on the rocks for many reasons. And we've been discussing about this on Ghana Short with various people. Right. Given that where we are, there is a need to look forward. We need to assess where we are and also look forward to bring various aspects of this issue as to how do we navigate this partnership. We still are in a partnership, it's not gone off. And it is, I don't think it will go off either, right? And we won't go back to the pre-2000 days. We have to move ahead. I have with me a panel of eminent people, clockwise Mr. Sunil Pant, Brigadier Arun Sahgal, Gen Hasnaian, and Gen Gautam Moorthy. Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar will join us a little later. I'm not going to introduce you to them because those of you who are on Ghana Short know them very well, right? And they're all eminent and national personalities. So what we'll do is, I request each one of you gentlemen, uh, to spend about 5 minutes on the current state of affairs between India and US, basically from your expertise, from your point of view. And then we'll see in the second half as to how do we take this forward and how do you visualize seeing this going ahead. At the outset, I'd request General Gautam Moorthy, sir. In fact, uh, I must also say, for me, it's a pleasure once again to host such eminent personalities on Ghana Short. It's been a long time. And after a long break, for many reasons, we are getting together. And I'm looking forward to a very good session which will educate me. Right. First, I request General Gautam Moorthy, sir, all yours. Please take on.
Thank you, General Shankar. Good evening to my fellow respected panelists and good evening to the audience. Thank you all for joining us today. There is no doubt that India is facing a very, very major test in its strategic partnership with the US. 1971, we faced a test, during the Indo-Pakistan War, when the Seventh Fleet sailed into the Indian Ocean. We faced a huge disruption in relations due to our nuclear tests in 1998. And then we all know the Stroke Talbot and Jaswant Singh talks that brought things on even keel. And finally, it was given a big boost during Mr. Manmohan Singh's time as Prime Minister and President George Bush, when India and US actually went into a strategic partnership. During Trump 1.0 also, the strategic partnership continued. Of course, you would recollect that there was a time when uh, we imposed some kind of retaliatory tariffs on the US for steel and aluminum, but that got recalled uh, in no time. It was undone. That apart, you see, the United States, we all know, is the policy is driven mainly by the president. It's a presidential form of government. And with Mr. Trump, the mercurial Mr. Trump, it is even more so. Mr. Trump does not listen very much to his advisors, only to a very, very close circle, and pretty much decides what he wants to do. Since you asked me to give a background, let me also recall a couple of weeks ago when President Trump said that the India file about India tariffs is on his desks and it's up to him to take a decision. Now, this punitive tariffs he has imposed, raising the duties to almost 50%. And why? Because India's purchase of Russian oil. And he says, why are you buying oil? When we told him that, look, the United States actually told us to buy the oil because it would stabilize the oil prices. He said, no, that's Biden's decision. So, we are looking at country to country partnership, irrespective of governments. But here is a case where you have a personality driven government which is dictating the policies of that government. And tariffs ultimately are going to hit whom? It will hit, of course, our exporters. But more than anything else, the market, Mr. Sunil Pant will bear with me, is entirely between a buyer and a seller. So let us say that the US buyer wants a particular product from India despite the tariffs. Then who's going to pay the cost? He's going to pay the cost. Our trade will continue. So now today we are one of the most heavily taxed US trading partners in Asia. And about 80 to 90 billion of our exports is under threat. The webinar today is how do we navigate? What does India do? First and foremost, we are defending our core national interests. The Prime Minister said so on the floor of Parliament. He said so in many public speeches. He says, uh, I may go, but India will stand. He has put all his public capital into this. We are going to uphold our strategic autonomy. We are a voice of multipolarity. There are articles saying that you have to be much more multipolar in today's world. But our red lines are very clear. We may have agreed to GM crops as far as cotton is concerned, but we're not going to let it happen with our food. We've got so many varieties of rice, so many varieties of vegetables. We are not a monocultural country. And likewise, our eating habits are not monocultural. Our diets are so different. Our varieties of pulses, of grains, of rice, it's also different. And we can't afford to let our small farmers, and dairy is again a very touchy subject because we are all aware that in the US, the cattle is fed on offal that is, dried, freeze dried, and mixed with the fodder and given to them. Now, that is anathema to most Indians. Most Hindus won't touch it. And if it's offal, whether it's of a pig or a cow, the Muslims won't touch it. The Hindus won't touch it. You'll go back to a 1957 kind of a situation. So India is not going to afford that. Our red lines are very clear. We are willing to negotiate. We will make possible concessions on some issues. But on these two, on food and dairy, I don't think any prime minister is going to agree, any government is going to agree. I think India is united on this. The opposition may have many issues with the government, but on this, there are certainly will stand by the government of the day. Uh, so, how does India navigate it? We have to diversify. We have to see that this 80 to 90 billion hit is not taken by our people. We have to look for different markets. And ultimately, the markets will dictate. General Lata Hasnaian and Brigadier Arun Sahgal are going to speak on the strategic implications, so I will not touch upon it. Apart from saying that we have also paused some defense acquisitions as a signal of our own leverage. But when you look at China, China has far more leverage than us. We will consider some fresh incentives to our exporters. The hints have been given. We have to make Bharat more Atmanirbhar. There is no question about it. And we have to position our response not as anti-American, but as pro-Indian, not as anti-Trump. We've got to be very careful about that. It's not got to be anti-Trump. It is not got to be anti-American, but it's got to be pure Indian. We are just protecting our interests. And there are a number of areas of cooperation that is still happening. There are policy wonks on both sides who want the situation to come out of it. Whether it will go back to what it was pre-Trump 2.0 or not remains still in a gray
To be
area.
seen. Yeah.
I will not say that it will not go back.
Right,
So
sir. Thanks a lot for
back to
your.
you, General Shankar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks a lot, sir. The lot to traverse. Now request Mr. Sunil Pant, sir, please do come in and educate us. And to, after all, this whole story started with trade. The whole story started with tariffs. It's all about trade, deal, and everything. Uh, we are in a state of no deal, and like what Trump has said, there's no deal till the deal is done. And and as of yesterday, that American team which is to come and negotiate the deal is not even coming now. Things look a little hazy. In fact, I wouldn't say hazy. Things look a little bleak as far as getting to the deal are concerned. So I'd request you to focus on this and focus on the economic aspects because that's your expertise. Please do educate us. All yours.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Pleasure being here with all of you and talking to the viewers on the other side. I think, as you very rightly said, trade today is the bedrock of a lot of activity, geopolitical or geoeconomic, whichever way you want to interpret it, that happens. And even when you look at comprehensive national power, we have moved from having a primarily militaristic point of view in terms of what is national effectiveness and power to something where we blend it with what the economic muscle of that particular entity is. Keeping that in view, we have to now look at where this is all driving us. Why is Trump so keen to raise tariffs? Why is he so ready to take steps which are actually unraveling decades, about 70 years, as they say, of US working to build a global partnership? And why is he doing it? There are two or three reasons which I believe are driving him to this. And one is that there's a burgeoning debt that US has, and that debt has to be paid and serviced. There's something like a $6 trillion debt that is going to come up, $6 to $7 trillion that's going to come up, which will need to be either recycled, rolled over, or paid off. In either of these circumstances, it's not a very happy job for the president to be able to handle. And as we have seen consistently over the last so many years, there have been deadlocks between the Republicans and the Democrats and members of the Senate and the Congress in terms of how extra financing is to be permitted and what the US debt should start looking like. But with all that, US debt today is at peak levels of 123% of their GDP, which is abominable. I mean, if it were a borrower coming to me as a banker, I would turn that person down first step. But US being what it is, it has been able to leverage its position to be able to hold on to such a high and, in terms of a lot of views, unserviceable debt level. Now, Trump has had a look at this. And whatever else you may say, as a businessman, he realizes that this is an insupportable level of debt, and therefore something needs to be done about it. And he has taken the easiest way out, which is bump up the tariffs, get more money from people who are going to be affected, and use that to fund your own deficits. It's like somebody said, a person with a credit card going into a number of malls, borrowing, taking money, taking goods on the credit card strength, and then telling the person who has given him the goods that they have to cut their prices because he's not going to service them otherwise. So it's a very difficult situation, but he's being able to do it for two or three primary reasons. Number one, the dollar continues to be one of the most important currencies, and the dollar is managed by the US. Even though at one time 70% of the global trade was being invoiced in dollars, today it is 58%, but even 58% is a huge amount. And as the global trade volumes are themselves growing. So that is one factor people have to keep in mind. And therefore, we all become dependent on the US. Many of the institutions that handle dollar trade are governed, ruled, and should I say protected or act under the influence of the US authorities. So even if you take the Society for Worldwide International Financial Transactions, SWIFT, it's basically a US organization. And that's the reason why Russian transactions got knocked out, because SWIFT decided to boycott them, decided to put a sanction on those. And that is where the power comes in, the power of being able to reach out and do business. In fact, one of the things that I learned in the bank was it's not so much the money that you have as it is the access to money that you enjoy. And if you enjoy that access to money, You have a far greater multiplier supporting you in your endeavors than you would if you had just the money. So now we come back to where we stand. If we look at in terms of even the reserves that are held, the global reserves that are there are substantially even today in dollar terms, even though countries like China and India to some extent have been offloading their dollars and their dollar reserves and converting to gold and to other secondary currencies. It's still a substantial amount that these people hold. Japan, for instance, still has about $1 trillion in US Treasury, which is a huge amount. India still has something like $240 million in US Treasury, which for us and for GDP of our size is a substantial amount. So we are all still hooked into the US, and that is where Trump draws his strength from. And once he decides that he is going to do something that is going to disrupt the system, we all start looking at the losses that are going to come to us because of the disruption that takes place. If the dollar loses value, look at what happens to our value of reserves, what happens to the global invoicing that is happening, what happens to the price of various products that are quoted in dollars. And with the OPEC, even though they are now getting off the dollar standard and more into other currencies like the yuan and UAE dirhams and others, even with the Saudis doing that, we still have a situation where dollar continues to be the primary currency for trade in petroleum and energy. So we have a situation where the US is occupying a pinnacle. It's occupying a high seat largely because of the fact that it controls the dollar. And the dollar gives it a disproportionate strength, which is available to none else. And that is what it is now exploiting to be able to cut its debt and bring back whatever it can of an economic semblance of order. There is also this report about the cryptocurrency, the stable coin that they plan to introduce, which is again supposed to be a means for absorbing the surpluses that they generate because of the movement of funds that takes place into US as manufacturing moves in, as other monies move into the US. So to be able to control inflation, stablecoin is supposed to be coming up as one of the alternatives. That's how we are looking at the dollar pressure. Now, why India? Why does India merit this kind of a special treatment when we keep on saying that the US itself is buying uranium, it's buying products from Russia, from when European Union is continuing to buy products from Russia, when China is buying huge quantities of coal and oil from Russia. Why India? Whereas the Indian trade in terms of value as a percentage of global trade is minuscule. And why India when India's trade with the US, if you look at it from the US side, is barely 2% of their total trade. Why are they singling India out? Because I think for two reasons. One is that we are a weaker nation and we can be pushed. We are a visible nation that people can see. People know India. So when they act against India, it is something that gets immediate global visibility and publicity. It's something like what Thucydides said in his dialogues. He said, "The strong do what they will, the weak suffer what they must." At this moment, we are on a weak wicket, and we have to suffer it. I will not say this is
Right.
the end of the road for us. We will probably have better options coming up, but for the present, we have to suffer it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So I think you
Okay.
highlighted very important points. Weak and visible India, and the way he's trying to do many things. We'll get back to it. Uh, General Hasnain sir, we all know that the foundation of the India-US strategic partnership has been defense cooperation. In fact, it was through defense cooperation and disaster management in 2004 tsunami that the whole turnaround took place and where we are. And if there is one thing which is a success, is a global success, is the India-US defense cooperation, notwithstanding the small issues of G engines coming in time and all that. With that as a backdrop, where do you see this whole story at this point of time, and how do you think this is going to get affected? Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Gen Shankar. Jai Hind to all our viewers, and I must compliment both Gen Gautam Moorthy, Mr. Sunil Pant. I think they were outstanding interventions that they have made. Mr. Pant's explanation in 5 minutes has been probably the most pragmatic explanation I have heard on economics for a very long time. Absolutely deep compliments to you. Now to come to the main question. To remind you, it was actually not 2004 December, the tsunami. It was 2005, 18th of July, the visit of Pranab Mukherjee to the Rand Corporation in the United States and Washington, which started this phase of the Indo-US relationship, which actually took off. If you see the speech which he made with Pranab Mukherjee as the then defense minister made, he was not the foreign minister, he was the defense minister, which he made there, was the one which laid the complete basis of the Indo-US defense relationship. But just to go a little further back, it's 1991, the Kicklighter proposals, from where the defense relationship really started. Kicklighter was none other than the commander of the U.S. Army component of the U.S. Pacific Command, and he came on a visit to India in 1991, and he's the one who brought the initial proposals, which started off the first cooperation exercise, Malabar and things like that, which all started at that time. Today, we are at a status where we have a large number of exchanges, a large number of exercises, tabletop exercises, and that kind of an exchange which goes on, training institutions between the two countries. And actually, in terms of hardware, I was just checking up on the AI. We are actually getting 13% overall hardware in intake from the United States at the moment is just 13% compared to much larger intake from Russia. With those few facts, let me just outline a few things. I've outlined here 10 issues that we have to ensure, or to ensure the durability of the strategic partnership, which is still ongoing very much. The first is, as Mr. Pant said, keep the economy going. Ensure that tariffs do not derail the trade and investment flows. Means for that, I'm sure the economists will see, but obviously we are on a bit of at the receiving end. The second thing, very important in this entire equation, is to ensure that our strategic autonomy is not affected. No overdependence on Washington to bail us out of situations and things of that nature. The situation on the northern front, on the northern borders at the moment is conducive. Mr. Wang is in Delhi and meeting the Prime Minister tomorrow itself. So, to that extent, this is not a situation where India really needs Washington for a particular purpose in the currency of times. Obviously, long term, there's something completely different. We have to maintain our Russia linkages, our energy and defense ties at all costs, and this must stay intact. Remember, we have to get the S-400s, which the Indian Air Force chief also spoke about the other day. The worthiness of the S-400 systems during Op Sindoor. We are going to come down to a 25 squadron Air Force if we don't now go off the shelf purchases as far as our air resources are concerned, and that's something which we will have to look at Russia constantly. Air defense, we all know, all of us know how we fought out those 88 hours with the refurbished L-70 guns and things of that nature, Shilkas and things like that. This cannot be repeated each time, and therefore we have to continue maintaining our supply chain of this kind of equipment, missiles, other kind of things which we need. The war with Ukraine will end. As we can see at the moment, it may not be apparent immediately, but the Russia's war with Ukraine will end in the near future, hopefully. Lead to a ceasefire, it might not bring about a complete solution. That's the time when the Russian factories will once again start rolling out equipment. I know S-400s have been delayed hugely as far as their delivery to India was concerned, but one can see pragmatically that in the near future, these delays will now be overcome. The third thing which is very important is to engage China pragmatically at this time. We must not give this opportunity to the United States to think that we are completely dependent on it to offset whatever we may be perceiving as threats from China. Therefore, we must seek to reduce the mistrust, safeguard the supply chains, which any economist will always sort of endorse. Uh, it's a difficult call. One can always make out, but I think some kind of overtures at this particular time, without losing your status, without losing your dignity in any form, can be possibly made, and this is something which is probably happening today, tomorrow, or the day after. Importantly, we have to separate the noise from the signal. What do I mean by this? We have to ignore Mr. Trump's theatrics on Pakistan. We can't allow the Pakistan narrative to sort of overtake this entire situation. This is the non-negotiable part of this aspect of our relationship. Uh, Trump's embrace of Pakistan is actually virtually political theater at the moment, and we must ignore it. Pakistan has once thrived on China's support, forcing the US periodically to return to Islamabad. We know the dynamic nature of the relationship between Pakistan and the United States. 4 or 5 times that's happened. Downturns have happened in the past. 2018, the 1st of January 2018, we can just remind our viewers, Mr. Trump got up in the morning on New Year's Day, wished the world Happy New Year, and sent out a tweet in which he mentioned particularly the $30 billion that the United States has provided to Pakistan and what it has done with that to produce the world's greatest. So this was all very important to bring out. The fifth point is to strengthen our multilateralism. Use BRICS. Mr. Trump does not like the term BRICS at all. Look at SCO. Look at Quad. Continue to look at Quad. We are not sort of offsetting ourselves from Quad. Continue to look at Quad and the various other global South platforms which are available for us to continue to have our influence in the right places as we grow. We deepen our technological and defense cooperation as much as we can with the United States. There's no downturn in this. Where we can afford it, we must. We must insulate our business-to-business ties, B2B ties, let private sector keep momentum even in downturns when it goes. And the very, very important part at this time, invest in a lot in narrative building. This is not the time for the Indian media, I strongly feel, to be making memes, putting out cartoons of the US leadership. These kind of issues do trouble relations between nations, but this is not taken very kindly when one nation starts making these kind of overtures to the other nation or to the public of the other nation. So I think this is something where maturity must prevail in the Indian media and in the Indian system completely. Lastly, I think we need to stay patient, balanced. Downturns are temporary, I would say, and the partnership is long-term. My last part on this. India has always been a practitioner of multi-alignment. It has remained between powers without collapsing into dependency on anyone. We have been dependent on the United States for something, but we are highly dependent on Russia for the same time. This moment calls for the same dexterity. Mr. Trump's United States may be difficult at this moment, and Mr. Putin's Russia may be embattled, and Xi's China may be suspicious, but India has the resilience to maintain ties with all three. And that's what it must seek to do while protecting its core interests. That means essentially patience with Washington, loyalty with Moscow, and initiative with Beijing. History has shown us downturns have come many times before. The US that sanctioned India in 1998 after the Pokhran test became our strategic partner by 2005. The US that fought India in the Chinese who fought India in 1962 became our critical trade partner by the 2000s. And the Russia that now leans heavily on Beijing still treats India as a valued interlocutor. Nothing is permanent, as they say, in global politics, and that's the policy we should continue to follow. I stop here.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think you said the most important sentence of yours is patience with Washington, initiative with China, and loyalty with Russia. I liked it. I think that's a byline we need to use going ahead. Okay. With this, I'd also like to welcome Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. He's joined us a little late, so welcome to the Ghana Short Casa webinar. It's a pleasure to have you here back. And we're going to the first round. I'll get back to you after Brigadier Arun Sahgal has his piece, and I'd request you to put across in about 4 5 minutes at that time. What do you think is at this point of time the current state of play between India and US from a foreign perspective, foreign affairs and external affairs perspective? Right. I'll now request Brigadier Arun Sahgal, sir. How do you see the current geopolitical state of play between India, US, and of course the surrounding factors? All yours, sir.
Thank you very much, General Shankar. Okay, a lot has been said, and I think a lot of issues have been clarified. I'll just make a couple of points from my perspective. My first point is President Trump and his team attitude is disrupting painstakingly built Indo-US relationship. The repeated statements coming from the administration officials is denouncing practically India on a daily basis. Even today, we heard a senior administration official telling us, what technologies are you talking about or giving to India? There is no sharing of technology with India because India is closing up to Russia, using Russian technologies. We don't want to compromise our technologies. Now, the whole attitude towards India is acrimonious. That's the thing which we need to take cognizance of. The second issue is this is happening when US itself is causing up to Russia on Ukraine trade and even on the security architecture in Europe. They are meeting right now in which the unfolding of the Putin plan is being given to Mr. Zelensky. From my perspective, and as have been outlined by some analysts in a recent article in the paper, it is something akin to the 1989 movement when US administration under senior President Bush tried to prize open Indian economy through unilateral Super 301 sanctions. At that time also, India was singled out along with Japan and Korea, but who made a compromise to the Americans, and India got the brunt of the sanctions because India did not compromise to the Americans. This carried on for 2 years. That time, also the trade surplus was the cause. Of course, the idea was to open up Indian economy and the IPRs, but the medicine was tariffs. So trade surplus and tariff as a medicine has been the standard operating procedure of the American as far as the Indians are concerned. Uh, the same story is being repeated today. Trade surplus, closed economy, Russian oil and support, bizarre ideas of linking sanctions to deny Russian oil revenues are all part and parcel of the narrative which is being built up by the Americans. What we are seeing, sirs, is not trade tariffs. It's got nothing to do with the economy. It's coercion and deterrence to make India come to the US demands. The demands, essentially speaking, are stemming out of the fact, and one has to go back to the recent articles which have come out in prestigious journals like Foreign Affairs, etc., where senior defense analysts from the American side have tried to paint a picture of an India not measuring up as a good strategic partner and trying to create a scenario where India has to become an ally of the United States. And that's only then only America will be satisfied. This kind of strategic autonomy notion backed up by multipolarity, etc., is not something which the Americans are accepting from India because they think India is a weak player, as earlier also pointed out, it can be coerced. So the reason why I would say that we need to be cautious about our relationship is with Washington is that American power is unpredictable and overbearing. The, from my perception, the 1989 experience of India provides us with some kind of possible options of dealing with America. First point is no compromise on the basics. Simply, India cannot afford to compromise on the basics. I think that point has been made by just about every panelist. Negotiate on possibles without compromising national interests. And here, some analysts with whom I have had some discussion have talked about reduced duties where feasible to improve trade options, but on the basis of quid pro quo concessions. They've also talking about we can think in terms of investments in areas of strategic interest to the United States under Section 2, something like pharma, steel, aluminum, auto parts, etc. But this has to be in response to American investments in our critical sectors. The way things are panning out and the way things are happening at this particular point in time, it will be foolish on India's part to enter into any major defense contracts. Already, there is no scope of 414 happening in the near future. That is joint production and co-development. There is no question of that happening in India. If we get 404s in adequate numbers, we should be happy. So I said, no, we cannot expect Americans to invest in quantum technologies and other emerging technologies in India at this particular point in time. So the options for us are that we, at one level, we have to wait out the
We'll talk
American.
of the options a little later, sir. You don't mind?
Okay, okay,
We'll talk of the options a little later. I
okay,
think very
okay.
important. There's a lot of acrimony, a lot of unpredictability, American, and a lot of overbearing attitude which we have to handle. Thanks a lot, sir. I now request Ambassador Sajjanhar, sir, as we you could make out so far, and as we all know, the signal to noise ratio from USA is very high, right? The signal is low and the noise is very high. Where do you think we are at this point of time? And as far as the options are concerned, we'll take it in the second round. And where do you think India and US stand in respect to the current geopolitical environment? All yours, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, General Shankar, and thank you very much, General Moorthy, for inviting me. And my apologies for being a little late. I was tied up in, a presentation I was making here. And I actually informed General Moorthy that I will be able to join just a
That's
few
fine,
minutes
sir.
later.
No issues, sir.
Yeah. So, basically responding to your question, what I feel is that the India-US partnership is a very consequential partnership. I don't think I'm sort of, sharing any secret on that. That's well known. But it has been given a huge shock by Mr. Trump. That having been said, I think we have to look at the trajectory of this partnership as it has emerged over the last 25 years. It started in March of 2000, and I think till February of 2025, it was going quite well, quite strong. If you look at the joint statement of Prime Minister Modi's visit, also, it has everything that we could have asked for. Even as far as Pakistan is concerned, leave aside collaboration as far as defense is concerned, technology is concerned, energy is concerned, all those areas, exactly as we would have wanted, they are there. And even as far as Pakistan is concerned, we have mentioned Jaish, we had mentioned Lashkar. So it is, I don't really need to go to 1st January 2018. What General Hasnaian has mentioned, of course, that's very valid. That he had said, we have been giving $33 billion to Pakistan, and all that it has been doing is providing safe havens to the terrorists that we need, and it will not continue any longer. And the same Pakistan has now emerged as a phenomenal partner. So, I think we need to see what is it that has happened. Let me not spend too much time except to say that, Mr. Trump gets driven by personal advantage, personal benefit, family benefit. So I think people have spoken about not only getting airspace, air bases for any operations against Iran, but also on cryptocurrency and on other things. The other aspect, or the first aspect that I really want to say is it is a very important relationship. It has emerged. You would see if you compare what Mr. Biden had said or Kurt Campbell had said just about a year ago, that this is the most important partnership for the United States for the current century. The most, not one of the defining partnerships as Obama had said in 2010. But this is the most significant partnership, most consequential partnership. So I think whatever is happening as far as Trump is concerned is related to him. And what Brigadier Sahgal has mentioned about all these venoms being spewed by the administration officials, because no one can really take on Mr. Trump. Everyone in that administration owes their position in that setup because of Mr. Trump is taking kindly to them. If they make any comments which are not in conformity with what Trump is saying, their position, like Tulsi Gabbard, for instance, when she had mentioned about whatever, so their position will come under a question mark. So the point I want to make is it is a very important relationship. Why Mr. Trump is doing, I think it's always very difficult to speculate or conjecture. But I think it is driven very much, not definitely by tariffs, because, I think we have very well laid out our red lines that these are the things, GMOs, dairy, agriculture, etc., where we cannot move. But still, he is pressing forward and he is not relenting. I think there is a personal pique involved in that. And that could also be, as far as his, heaping encomiums of praise on Pakistan is concerned, personal pique against India, because we have nipped this whole idea of his we've been nipping it in the bud, that he had nothing really to do as far as getting the ceasefire between India and Pakistan in Op Sindoor is concerned. So I would imagine that we'll really have to wait and see how it moves forward from here, because it is likely that the elections that take place next year in November, the midterm elections, there I would imagine that the impact of all these tariffs in terms of inflation, in terms of lowering of investment, in terms of other ill conceived impact of his actions, that will start getting reflected, and that will also have a role to play as far as the midterm elections are concerned. And I guess that is where it would come about. As far as we are concerned, rather than, I think we have followed an excellent policy so far, being very measured in our approach and not responded in the same manner or measure as Trump has done or his officials have done. But basically now I think the fact I heard this morning that the visit of the American team that was to take place on the 25th, that has also been postponed. So that is disappointing, because I was hoping that we could have sent out, without discussion, you can't really reach anywhere. I don't know what are the back channels that we have with the United States to take this issue forward. But basically, we need to salvage whatever is there as far as the relationship is concerned, continue with whatever we can. I don't know under the circumstances whether Quad Summit could take place, under such vibes, whether that, either would be a possibility or would be desirable even to hold it. The other is as far as our engagement with the United States is concerned, while we need to continue to maintain our partnership with Russia, but the range, the scope of our relationship with the United States is much broader, I would suggest, than it is with Russia. It is with Russia as far as energy that is newly found. It is only 2 or 3 years ago. Earlier, before that, when energy supplies were normal, we were getting only less than 1% of our energy supplies from there. For defense, it is important, and for geopolitical reasons that Russia doesn't go totally into the embrace of China. Maintaining relations with Russia is important. But I think when you are, without making comparisons of any nature, I think the potential, the range, the scope of the US partnership is very much
Broader.
broader and deeper. The last point is on China. Meaning, I accept that we need to take initiatives with China, but I think the ball is in China's court, because in any aspect that I look at, whether it is India's membership of UN Security Council, India's membership of NSG, in terms of trade, we are having a trade deficit of $100 billion. In terms of its relations with Pakistan, supply of defense intelligence to Pakistan, its demand over 93,000 square kilometers of my territory, etc. For all these, the ball is very much in China's court. And this is exactly what Dr. Jaishankar has said today. If we want to take the relationship forward, it has to be done on the basis of the three mutuals. But normalizing and stabilizing relationship between the two countries, that is definitely what we should do. That is what we are doing. And I think Prime Minister's visit to China in that sense will tend to cool the waters. All this talk about, BRICS presenting a unified front.
We'll tackle that, sir, in the way forward.
Yeah,
in the
okay.
next,
Okay.
We'll get to that. Also, thanks a lot. A lot of important things have come out. And I think the most important thing which has come out is the India-US partnership is the most consequential and the most important one. But unfortunately, it has gone off rails in the Indo-Pakistan railway track. That's where it has gone, and that it comes down to that. Now, the question before each of us is, where does it go from here? Where does India go from here? There are two aspects to this, which I would request all of you to put in. Just stick to about 4-5 minutes, please. Where does India go from here? Where does the India-US partnership go from here? These are the two questions which I request you to take on. First, Mr. Sunil Pant, your views.
Right, sir. See, I think when we look at where India goes from here, then we are looking at the current situation, its negative implications for India, and what could be the positives that we see before us in the way forward, both in the short term, medium term. Long term, I think, is too far away to look at. So, short term and medium term. Well, the way I would look at it is, yes, short term there is a pain. With all these impositions and everything that are there is a pain, not only in terms of what we export to US, which is about close to something like, let's say, out of about 600 million, we are exporting about 100 odd billion there, which is substantial. So, but if you look at it from the US point of view, it is very inconsequential, the total trade that we have with the US. But looking at it from our point of view, yes, it is important. Plus the fact that a lot of our service exports, which we have developed, which we have anchored our position in the world on, are dependent substantially on what we are able to work out with the US and with Europe, which often toes the US line on this. So we have to look at it from that angle, in terms of US as the direct trading partner and US as an influencer when we are looking at others. There have been some views that have come up in the recent times They've said there are 7 countries that are unhappy with the US, and that could be an opportunity for India to expand there. But it's not so easy. It's not so easy to just open your door and start saying that, okay, now you buy your bread and butter from me. It doesn't work like that. So I think, we need to look at it. If there are opportunities, we definitely need to make use of those. But it doesn't mean that because there is one door shutting, the other door will automatically open for us. We have to prepare ourselves for that. And that takes a bit of doing. In the short term, therefore, there is going to be a little bit of pain in terms of both the employment that we generate, in terms of the possible remittances that may get hit, because even though US is not the biggest source of remittances to India, but still it's a substantial source of remittances to India, and the currency advantages that we have. If you would just look at the way the exchange rate has also been moving over the last few weeks, it has gone down from about 83, 84, 85 to about 87 plus today. So there is an impact that we are seeing even in terms of how the exchange rate, the rupee dollar exchange rate is moving, which is also a pointer to how things are being perceived all around and what the possibilities are. The second thing that we have to see is, in terms of the near term, what are the alternatives that are there for India? We talk about, again, looking at China as a market, but China is a market for imports. China has never been a good market for exports. And that's also because, we don't have the export efficiency that we need to have to be able to competitively export to China. That is something that we have to understand. And therefore, that is again an area which we can talk about, but which is not likely to yield much result. Therefore, short run, yes, we will take a hit. GDP, which was being projected at 6.5, may come down to 4, but it will never be zero, because the Indian domestic market is so large that 60% of the Indian economy is actually sustained comfortably by the domestic market. It's 40% that is dependent and reliant on the overseas transactions and trade that we have. So that is one factor. Looking at it in the medium term, yes, India will need to gear up. It will need to improve efficiencies in terms of both the input output ratios that it has for various segments of the economy, as also for various activities in that economy. We'll have to start looking at import substitution, not as a measure for keeping out goods, but as a measure of making more efficient use of the resources that we have to be able to employ them in terms of what we can export and we can earn more out of. So it probably needs a rejig, it needs a resetting in terms of what we can do by way of the future industrial policy that we have, in terms of what the service sector is going to be looking like. And we have to look at where we are going to position ourselves in the overall scheme of things, with a view to growing very substantially, because India's engagement with the world is not very substantial. To be able to come to the table and be able to make a statement there, we need to be more substantially involved with the world, and that is where we need to do more of manufacturing, more of trade, and more of services in India. So that, I think, is where we will need to work.
Thanks a lot, sir. A lot of solid, hard, facts which we have to look at. We have to look at ourselves within, and we have to look at a lot of reforms in the coming days. Uh, it's a big question whether our government is up to it or not, because we are in a crisis, and this crisis can be only resolved through great reforms. But we'll see how it rolls out. Uh, Brigadier Sahgal, sir, your views on where we are and how do you think we're going to go ahead?
So I think economic points he has covered very well. The issues that some of the issues that, uh, like I was trying to highlight earlier, we cannot compromise on our national interest. So what we have to do is what we did earlier and we've been doing in the past. We have to think in terms of reducing duties where feasible and improve our trade options. That is something which is fair amount of space is available within this option. But we also must seek and ensure we get similar concessions from the Americans. There is no altruism in this issue. The second issue is there are sectors like pharma, steel, aluminum, auto parts, etc., where America will be happy to seek our investments. These are important areas for America, and they are critical sectors. They come under that Section 2 or whatever thing is. And so, if we are willing to invest, and why not, we would be not meeting a requirement, but we would be creating our, let's put it, leverages in terms of our investments in the United States. My third point is defense. I repeat again, we have purchased a large number of defense systems from the United States, but each one of the systems is in different kind of a limbo. We The point I keep making to my American colleagues is very simple, is that we do not own those systems. The software updates onto various kinds of upgradations that are come and repeatedly come, are always a matter of extreme degree of regulatory mechanisms and whole lot of unnecessary delays. The ISET, again, I am very clear in my mind. This is an area which we will have to go, and I think I'm happy that the Prime Minister is very rightly said that India is coming out with its own semiconductors by the end of this year. We are trying to ensure that we get the right missions for dealing with our emerging technologies, because it's a fallacy to believe that any country which has spent a huge amount of money in a developing cycle would deal with IPRs to you. They will not give you IPRs. This is impossible. Even when we are looking now at the engines which we think we can get from the French or from the, until unless there is a joint project and there is we have this thing of it, that is the trilateral Japan, Italy, UK project where they're developing an aircraft, all of them together as partners. So we have to do this as a partner. As far as the issue is concerned, another issue is concerned, apart from the nice points, interesting points made by Dr. Pant, I like to add that we can look at trade diversification. And here we are being toying, I with some colleagues in the industry have been toying with the idea, is why don't we look at Asian Economic Union? The idea of Asian Economic Union is that India, Japan, Australia, and ROK, they are strong economies, and we can think in terms of collaborating. I have no idea how we can do it. We're still in the process of talking to people. The issue is every one of them are now realizing. Take for example Japan. Japan has recently signed a $13 billion defense agreement with Australia for frigates. Why would Japan go and buy Australian frigates? Because they have no, the saying of the Americans will provide them. Similarly, even in the apart from defense, even in the other sectors, we can look at collaborating with Asian players, including look at some of the important BRICS partner, Brazil. For example, China, Brazil have a huge trade partnership. You only, I think, mentioned it to me the other day, what a large trade partnership it is. So we should look at Brazil, look at South Africa. And as far as China is concerned, I by and large agree that with China it should be calibrated opening. But my recent research has indicated a very interesting point, that the Chinese are always willing to collaborate, but from a position of strength. Now, that is not a position of strength where they control the market, but from the position where they are seen as a relatively uh, important player, and they not so much of dictating, but they look at it from, yes, you have come to us. Like today, if you notice, we have discussed, our foreign minister has discussed with him about the opening up of the sectors in which they have recently imposed the restrictions, like what is
Fertilizers.
fertilizers, and
Fertilizers, rare earths, and auto and things like
and all
that.
those. So we have to look at these issues from this perspective. Until and unless there is an alternative, and the Americans find that India will not budge and India cannot be coerced, we will come back to it. And once again, before I end, I want to go back to the 1989 movement. Please read it. Go to how India weathered that storm at that time. For 2 years, our relations were in limbo, but India did not give in. 1989 is a story in India's perseverance, India's capacity, and India's non-compromising attitude overcame, and we became a good partners again. So I don't think the partnership is in any case is in a limbo, but we must not allow the American president or his team to think that India can be roughshod. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. Very sage advice. I'd request General Hasnaian, sir, your views on the way forward.
Thank you. I think a lot of ground already covered. Economics, not at all to be covered by me. Some part of geopolitics already covered by Brigadier Sahgal. So, make a few points. First of all, entirely endorse what Brigadier Sahgal said, that we've done it before and we can do it again. But then there have to be two who have to make the tango. It can't be a one-sided thing completely. Now we can see that there is no American ambassador in New Delhi at the moment, and unlikely that there's going to be an American ambassador here for quite some time. As long as Mr. Trump wants to coerce us, he will try and make sure that there is no one posted here to downside our, our bring us down in overall stature and things of that kind. The other thing is, this is the time when actually for the first time in many years, India has got the biggest challenge on diplomacy and narrative management. It's a lot to do with narrative management. This afternoon, I had 3 youngsters from the United States, all studying in the United States, with me in office, who had come to discuss certain issues of Indo-American relations, and were telling me how seriously on the campuses Pakistan's narrative is making the rounds everywhere. It is the diaspora, Pakistani diaspora, they're proactive, very, very active, making sure that they dilute India's stand, whatever they can talk about India, target India, and India seems to be at the receiving end. Now, this is, I think, for the one time when we really have to rise to this occasion and make sure that things change through our narrative management itself. And we have a huge diaspora there. Why shouldn't we be seen to be engaging with them in every city? It's not just a question of Washington or New York or Los Angeles or San Francisco. We need to do this in multiple cities all over the United States if you want to do a proper narrative management. I think the think tanks, this is a time when the Indian think tanks, and there are lots of good think tanks now in India, must be tasked with the government of India itself. Even if it has to be financed to some extent, even if it has to be sponsored to some extent. There should be a lot of interaction on Indo-US relations. You can't expect the government to play this alone. No. Mr. Jai Shankar can't do this on his own. Neither can the Indian Foreign Service do this on its own through its embassy in Washington. This has to be a multi-point contact to tell them that the tango is only possible between India and the United States, that there is no one else in South Asia or this part of the world who makes a difference to the United States. The Indo-Pacific, the name Asia-Pacific was changed to the Indo-Pacific, primarily as an understanding and a recognition of Indian contribution to the strategic partnership. If you remember the Shangri-La dialogue, I think way back in 2017, that the change took place. Do you mean to say that now it should be called the Pacific, or it should be in the Indo portion of the Indo-Pacific is now Pak-centric because of the United States emerging relationship with Pakistan? I mean, we've got to call call this out and say how ridiculous all this is. We are natural partners on two sides of Southeast Asia, into the Indo-Pacific, into the Indian Ocean, and the Indo-Pacific is a natural corollary to the Indo-US relationship. We need not pick fights. We are not a nation who picks fights. When we see a relationship deteriorating, we have to work overtime to make sure that we retrieve it. And I think no one can play a greater role than the media, Indian media itself. Unfortunately, we do not have a responsible enough media. While the print media does an excellent job in all this, the electronic media, and this evening itself, I was watching the memes on Indo-US relations which are coming out. They're absolutely ridiculous. All this is going to reach the information department in the United States. Everyone will be watching all this, and this is not helpful at all. I think it's about time the government of India decided that its strategic relationships around the world cannot be left to be played out by the Indian media. Enough is enough on this. We need to call the shots at some stage. I'm sure if Mr. Trump gets the Nobel Prize, I'm sure India will be the first to congratulate him, to compliment him. There's nothing wrong with it, because if peace prevails in Ukraine, and if Gaza ultimately becomes peaceful and there's a ceasefire there also, I'm sure Mr. Trump is on his way to becoming a Nobel laureate at any time in the near future. We have to convince the United States that the concept of a swing power, India is the swing power. If anything, it can make a relationship to the United States overall comprehensive power in this part of the world against the dual combination of China and Russia. It is only a relationship with India. That aspect has to be convincing. And I think that can be hugely done through some good writings from here. And I think this kind of a thing can be undertaken even by a think tank like Casa. And there are many other think tanks in India who should be tasked specifically for this. In fact, this is a time when I would say urge very strongly the Honorable Prime Minister of India, and he's a personality who loves to listen to ideas. He did it even at the height of the 88-hour war. I think he should call some pragmatic, good strategic thinkers, let them come, give their opinion, give their advice, listen to it, and do whatever he wishes. But he must have the benefit of this advice, which should be made available from all of us. I think places like the National Defense University, the war colleges of the United States, RAND Corporation, a kind of think tanks of that quality, RAND, etc. RAND is where Pranab Mukherjee's speech of 18th July 2005 started it all, as I just mentioned to you. So such similar seminars, I'm sure the government of the United States may not wish to conduct seminars or sponsor seminars. The Indian Embassy in Washington can sponsor many of them in many of the think tanks. This is the time to splurge your dollars. You have $650 billion of foreign exchange reserves lying with you at the moment. So I have focused my entire thing on narrative outreach diplomacy, because economics has been very well covered by Mr. Pant. But I think these are the issues, because this, to my mind, it's a very transactional change which has taken place in the Indo-US relationship. It's not a transformational change and a dilution which has suddenly overstruck us overnight. It's a transactional change, and I'm very certain that in the near future we are going to retrieve this. But for that, we have to be pragmatic. We have to ensure that our outreach is very, very focused. I'll stop there. You are on mute. You are on mute.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, sir. I've had a power failure here, but I'm going on, alternate arrangements. So bear with me. But a lot of important points have been brought out. I now request Ambassador Sajjanhar, sir, your views on the way ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, General Shankar. So some excellent points have been made both on the economic aspects, narrative building aspects, and all the others. So all of them very relevant. Let me sort of add my two penny bit to this. Number one, I think if you are talking in terms of international partnerships, we need to focus on that a great deal. If we are losing out, or a market is being diminished to some extent, that is the United States, in terms of our exports. Although we need to keep in mind that some of the elements, some of the items that are significant in our export basket to the United States, like pharmaceuticals, like IT, they are at least so far not covered by the tariffs that have been imposed. So, those will continue to be there. I have, of course, a couple of one question, when I think Mr. Pant mentioned that our GDP might come down to 4%. Now, since I've been out of the country, maybe I've not really been able to follow all the writings or press, all that has been appeared in the media. But what I heard was that, if these our exports are affected to a significant extent, the impact on our GDP will be to the tune of 0.3% or something. But maybe this is something that we can look at as to what the impact, because as it has been mentioned, our exposure to exports in any case is not very significant. It is about 380 $400 billion of exports in goods. In services, of course, if you add, it becomes about $800 billion. So it becomes that. The second is, I take the point that Mr. Pant made, that we need to be efficient, and, efficiency, quality, etc., etc. That has to be introduced, that has to be brought up. But that having been said, India still is able to export how much, about $400 billion worth of goods, and the amount that goes to China is in the range of 10 to $12 billion. So surely we can do better. I think our people have found that there are huge NTBs, non-tariff barriers, that stand in the way. And if some of us might remember, even when the Wuhan summit took place, I still recall Prime Minister Modi had taken all those sheets of papers telling China that you need to reduce the NTBs on non-basmati rice and many of the agricultural products that we are exporting. So definitely China can do better than importing just 10, $12 billion from India every year. That having been said, coming back to my first point, that we have signed a good FTA with the United Kingdom. It has again been done after a long time. We had the visit of the College of Commissioners from the European Union in February this year. We have made a commitment that EU-India FTA will be signed by the end of this year. We have very recently signed with Australia, with UAE, etc. I think we need to look at other opportunities with other countries. I take Brigadier Arun Sahgal's point about reaching out to some of the Asian countries. My only thinking would be, with all the three that he has mentioned, we have comprehensive economic partnership agreements which have really not worked in our favor. So we are asking for a renegotiation of all those agreements, particularly also with the ASEAN countries, because after signing of those agreements, their exports to India have increased, our exports to those countries have gone up only marginally. So I think there are a number of things that we can do, both with China, with the others. As far as BRICS is concerned, this is what I was saying earlier, that if we expect that, all, like it has been suggested by Mr. Lula, or it's been suggested by China also, that BRICS presents a unified front to Mr. Trump's tariffs. That, in my view, is not going to happen. So we should not really be looking at that, because there are too many divergences and differences amongst the BRICS countries. Similarly, I think SCO, if we look at its achievements over the last 25 years that it has been there, I don't think it has been able to achieve anything very much, except to get one regional anti-terrorist structure in Tashkent, which has really not done all that much. So I think on those we don't have much to do. But as far as our own making our economy and our industry more efficient, definitely there are possibilities. And as it is said, never allow a crisis go to waste. So definitely here we can, and I can see that those meetings are taking place in Delhi even today, in terms of also the recalibration of GST and so on and so forth. So definitely looking inwards, strengthening ourselves inwards. Of course, we do not need to succumb. We should not be succumbing. I think the message has been very clear: not capitulate to America. In my view, it is not a phenomenon that is going to, last for too long. I mentioned about the elections, midterm elections next year. The point that has been made by General Hasnaian on using Indian diaspora. I think this has come as a big surprise that the Indian diaspora, at least to what I have been able to see, has been quite silent. It has been quiet. And I wonder whether it is again, no one really wants to step on Mr. Trump's toes. And, all the other countries, Japan, EU, all of them are succumbing. That's why Trump has been emboldened that he can coerce India also. But maybe that is why, even as far as the Indian diaspora in the US is also concerned, because otherwise they have been very vocal. The point that Brigadier Sahgal made about 1989, I think it is very valid, because I was in the GATT at that time when the 301 and Super 301 was imposed against India. And at that time, India was a much smaller economy. Today, it is a bigger economy. I think we can withstand all those pressures, coercions, look for more opportunities outside, hunker down, look at your own strengths, develop your own strengths, and I think we will be able to come out quite well out of this challenge. Jan Shankar.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot. I think all of you have given some fantastic points. One point I'd like to make about the Indian diaspora. This is my observation. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. But I think a lot of our Indian diaspora backed Trump. And the way Trump has behaved has shocked them also, and they're also at a loss as to how to react. And this is the feeling which I've got after repeated interaction with a lot of, in fact, all of us have our kith and kin there. So, we know this is the reality, the Howdy Modi show and all that. So that's how it is. Right. Before I request General Murthy to sum up in the end and thank everyone, a few major issues which have come out, I'll just put on. We are in a crisis. Let's face the fact that we are in a crisis. It's a crisis of many kinds. It's a new situation which we are encountering. We are looking at an unreliable USA. We can't depend on it. Neither are the options which are available outside so great, whether it's Russia, China, or wherever, Brazil, Japan, whoever you call it. It's a new story. And the difference, the advantage which we have when you look back at 91, at 91 we were a weak economy, and yet we still survived. We didn't have the kind of linkages, we didn't have the kind of international standing which we have today, and yet we came out trumps. So at this point of time, we are a much stronger economy. We are one of the greatest strengths of our economy is our people, who are the best consumers. To that extent, they will pull us out. And if we have faith in us, ourselves and our own people, I don't see how we don't come out of this whole story. the options are many, but with all these options, the pitfalls are also equally that much. So we have to be a little careful. That's what everyone has put across, especially with how we handle China, because China has weaponized trade. We still have problems. We still have the dam going. We still have issues of the border. We have, issues of the Dalai Lama and all. So on a rebound from USA, we shouldn't go from a bad situation to a worse situation with China. That's something which I think the nation is aware of. And my interaction with people day in and day out gives me the idea, a view that one has to be very careful when dealing with China. But other than that, I think we need to be calm, cool, balanced. We shouldn't lose our balance. And I think a prime minister, to a large extent, has shown the way how not to lose balance, the way he went about, spoke to the whole nation and clarified a lot of issues during the Republic Day. I'm sorry, during the Independence Day talk from the ramparts of the Red Fort, where he's drawn the line in the stand once again. But he's laid out, for the first time probably, I'm sure everyone will agree with me here. We heard a prime minister giving a virtual roadmap, a technology-based roadmap, uh, with a lot of strategic underpinnings to the nation. If even 50% of what he spoke gets implemented, I think we are well on our way. That's the way I look at it. Multi-alignment and or non-alignment to multi-alignment is not new for us. We'll continue with this. Uh, we don't have to compromise. We've never had a history of compromise, so I don't see why we should compromise at all. And I don't think that will happen. And we need to strengthen from within as we recalibrate. And it leaves me is I'd like to thank a few, yeah, few members who joined, all the new members who have joined Gunner Shot. I'd like to thank all of them. And I do hope more join in and more people subscribe to Gunner Shot as a whole. And where we're going to have such vibrant discussions day in and day out. And at the end, I'd like to thank Mr. Sunil Pant, Brigadier Arun Sahgal, Gen SA Hasnaian, and Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar for the valuable words they've put out. And, I think very deep insights they've given. Unfortunately, General Gautam Moorthy is not there because of the weather conditions in Pune, and his internet, I think, has failed. Thanks a lot, and have a great day, and Jai Hind to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, Gen Shankar. Thank you.
Thank you,
All
sir.
the best. Thank you. Goodbye. All the best.